Hey, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome once again to Ponte Politik. Umtungwa uyengwayo umalinge, undima kankumbuzo uthando lwethu kadlanga. Umntana enkosi umuyengwayo umalinge, undima welcomes you once again in this wonderful episode of Ponte Politik, and we are streaming live on this wonderful day. It is called Mother's Day in this part of the world where I am at, and I want to say to all the mothers out there, and we hope that this was a wonderful day to all of you. Thank you for joining us. We are watching with us in whatever platform. We are available on YouTube at Pont de Politique. Make sure that you continue to subscribe to our channel. We grow our community, we grow our information, we expand our knowledge base to make sure that the majority of people are able to get hold of the teachings, lessons, learnings, conversations, and everything else that we are doing as Ponte de Politique. Again, I say to you, if you are watching with us live at this moment, thank you very much, and ensure that you give us a big thumbs up to like our episode. Unfortunately, I thought it must be announced as soon as we can that we are unable to flight our session tonight on Facebook and on Twitter, but going forward in the upcoming weeks, we are going to go back to our ordinary social media handles. That means on Facebook, our episodes will be there. But on a Monday at 12 o'clock, this episode will be on. Make sure that you get to make comments and engage with us in one way or the other. It's a month of May in the African community and in the Pan-Africanist fold, and in the Africanist understanding, the month of May is referred to as the month of Africa, and therefore many people give it different names, but we know for sure that those who had established it, especially the revolutionary group of the Pan-Africanists, have maintained the position that this month of May is a African liberation month. There's a long history around it. You can go back to most of our episodes on Ponte Politique. You will learn about Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanism's differences and orientations and strands and all of those things. But today, because we are moving with the same theme of Africa Month, African Liberation Month, and so on and so forth, and we are having a different approach today. We're looking at a sister, and we're looking at a comrade, we're looking at a poet, an educationalist, we're looking at a very lovely person who's very close to my heart. She's almost everything. She travels to the continent. She's an artist, a well-established artist, and we have her tonight, or today, if I were to say, all the way from the United States of America, and she is known as Takarra KariJay Johnson, my sister and comrade. Greetings, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing so good. How are you all? How are you?
No, we're good. Thank you for embracing us on this particular day to be part and parcel of this conversation. We know that the month of May is a month of Africa in majority of the Pan-Africanist fold. So thank you for allowing yourself to be part of this conversation. In South Africa, it is almost 6:05. And where you are, I think it's about after 11 in the morning. Is that so?
Yes, I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana right now, and it's
Okay.
about 11, a little past 11 a.m. here.
Okay. Now that's good. Thank you for joining us. For those who do not know, who is KariJay? KariJay is is a proud Pan-African woman who loves influencing change through music, education, traveling, and spoken word poetry. And she has dropped various albums, and her debut album, I think, was in 2019 as an independent artist. Kari has released a large number of wonderful music, wonderful poetry. If you go on Spotify, you are able to see some of her latest contribution in the music world. And as I have said, You follow her on Twitter and on Instagram. There is the Twitter handle. There is the Instagram handle. There we go, my sister.
Hey.
When you decided to, I'm just going straight to the conversation. When
Absolutely.
I introduced you, it is how you understand yourself. You talk about yourself as a proud Pan-African woman,
Mhm.
a woman with an X instead of an A, and you like to influence change, and your influence of change is in music, poetry, education, and just tell us, just talk to our viewers as to why did you decide to define yourself the way that you define? You can break down all these elements of
Yeah,
KariJay.
most definitely. Well, there's so many different political implications on identity of Black people, Africans, people in America. And when you're coming into the knowledge of yourself, when you come into the knowledge of, when I came into the knowledge of myself, of who I was and who my people were, regardless of my birthplace, it was very clear that my ancestors, not two, three generations ago, were from the continent, very specifically in Ghana. And when I was able to discover that part of myself, it was very necessary that I honored it as a most important part of who I am and who I'm becoming every single day. The more I mature, the more closer I begin to understand my roots to my history and the knowledge of that history. Um, a proud Pan African woman, I began to understand, and I didn't understand myself. I believe as a Black girl growing up in Sacramento, California, before I understood myself as an African woman, I understood myself as a Black girl. And with that cultural, very clear cultural understanding, allowed us to know that whatever our otherness was, it empowered us and influenced us to do things differently in the context of the colonial states of America. So growing up with an otherness to your understanding, your identity, having to be able to live and be well, having to be able to produce at the rate of your counterparts and have honor and reverence for yourself and everything that you're creating, it's very important that you know who you are and what you stand on.
I
So many
see.
people are trying to attach um, their very limited understandings of your value, of your worth, of your capacity. That's always being projected upon you. What your what what the oppressors say, what the how do we say, the offspring of our oppressors. All of these people, they put things on you as a woman, especially as a Black girl, left to
Mm.
the hands and minds of the adults around you to make space for you to be all the things you want to be. And I wasn't necessarily raised in a Pan African household, though I was
Okay.
raised in a house that was very, very education and information centered. So I was the daughter of two ministers and the two ministers of music. And so my father was a choir director and musician and drummer and drum major in school. And my mother was a pianist and a minister and an evangelist missionary. So we had a lot of things being told to us about who we were allowed to be. And through music, my own music, I was able to really stand on who I knew I was. And through the creation of my music, down to the production and the sounds and the sonic, it allowed me to further understand who I wanted to present myself as to the world. And back to the Pan Africanist point, I believe I turned into a Pan Africanist as I went and traveled, and I met Black girls around the world who hadn't yet understood themselves as African women, but we knew that otherness connected us some kind of unknown way. And I always sought to define and bring more definition to that otherness. Like, why is it all the Black girls I meet, wherever we go, there's something about us that's connected, is unified. And later on in the maturity of my thought process, that became to be, a Pan African woman. But you always knew it as a child that something about me is not from this place.
I
Something about
see.
me is not being fed here. Something about me is thirsty for more
So, so,
substance.
so the spirit is always yearning for something that it knows, but you as a physical body do not know what is it, but the spirit knows what it is
Absolutely,
looking for.
absolutely. And I always will have to test the spirit and give all thanks to the Most High, because I wouldn't have been able to bring my own feet to the path that allowed me to further define and processed information that I needed for for myself, for my identity. My own feet wouldn't have found their way there. It was truly and most definitely the spirit. So thank you for that.
And that's wonderful. It's a wonderful story of rediscovering and finding yourself. And we know that
Mhm.
some people would say that no, I found myself. But with you, the way that you're presenting it as it's like it's an ongoing journey. It's a process of continuing to define and find yourself. As an example of a place where you linked up with girls, black girls, if we were to use your words,
Mhm.
an example of that place where you linked up with those girls. What are those examples? Because you speak about a traveler in you, and you do travel. So, what examples of the places that you've been to where you found this connection of yourself as a black girl from a colonial states of America,
Mhm.
in born and bred in Sacramento, but now
Mhm.
living in Louisiana? What are
Yeah.
these places that you're talking about?
The first place that I was able to travel and really connect with Black girls outside of the context of America was in Ghana. When I had traced my ancestry back to Ghana, that was the first place I wanted to go. I didn't take any breaks. I went straight to Ghana, and
Okay.
my school had a program there, so I was studying abroad. But I was able to grasp and uncover how my Ghanaian ancestry was beginning to manifest while also feeling like a foreigner in the
Okay.
country for the first time, and going to meet the girls who were my age, who were living in Ghana, who were living in Accra, who were going to the clubs and going to, school and classes with us, and be able to say, wow, like, you could definitely have been my friend in America. You probably would have been my only friend in
I
America.
see.
And then when I went to Puerto Rico, and was able to mix with the young girls and and I wouldn't just say young girls, I would just say young people, because some of the younger children, like younger than me, were looking up to us and wanted to have questions and wanted to ask us, and it didn't have such a gendered understanding. They just knew we were from another place, and it
I
didn't
see.
matter. It didn't matter whether we were women or men. They just wanted to know, how can we build and learn and grow with you. And so once they seen how eager I was to learn about Ghana, they said, well, you're gonna have to tell us some stuff about Sacramento and America and
Where you
California.
come
Like,
from?
right,
Yes.
right, right. So it became a very healthy exchange, and we began
I
to
see.
just be able to empower one another with, what I learned from my section of the world and what you were able to learn from your section of the world. And I just felt like, to your point of the ongoing, continuous, almost eternal journey of just learning and knowing, that I was able to see myself in every new person that I met.
I see.
And it was never ending. That never ends. That happens with everybody. Even strangers don't feel as strange when you're expecting for a part of yourself to be illuminated, to some extent. So it was very beautiful. Puerto Rico, definitely the Caribbean, the Virgin Islands. I went to the Virgin Islands, and them sisters definitely look like, they asked me so many times, and I get this everywhere I go.
I
Someone
see.
asks me if I can be from there. If I don't speak, well, all this English, they would
Yes.
never
Yes.
know. I just be quiet. They would
Because
never
because
know.
because you look like them.
Hmm.
Almost everything, the phenotype, the physique, the
Hmm.
everything else is actually from that particular place. But what caught my attention in your previous comment was when you say, when once you trace your ancestry
Hmm.
in Ghana, and then you visited, but you felt like a foreigner in the
Yeah.
place of your ancestors. Um, would you do you have a comment on that and how to expand on that, so that for a person who might be watching this podcast, this
Absolutely.
person is born, bred, and buttered in the United States, but they feel like they want to
Not
come.
buttered. Ooh, I don't like that word. Ooh, I don't know if I like that one.
I'm sorry.
It's
I'm sorry
okay.
for that. I'm sorry for that. My point is that the person looks at this conversation and they feel like, I would love to go to the continent of Africa, but I don't want to feel like the other, because already
Yeah. Yeah.
in the United States I am the other already.
Yeah.
So do you have a comment that you would want to put across before we can talk to that particular exchange between Ghana and Sacramento, United States, and
Absolutely.
all that?
Absolutely. My first to members of the diaspora that are looking to go home and learn more about themselves or the culture, I think you should travel first with the trueness that you are the other. And that's not um, that's not to separate our continued work and our continued mission to unite our people. That's just to come with the vein of truth and how we do that, how we unite, and how we come. When I first traveled to Ghana, I did feel like I was made to be a foreigner by the Ghanaians because I was in their home. And unless I shared the bed with them and woke up that morning with them in their home, it's very natural for one to respond to you as someone that's not usually here in this home. And so, out in a greater context, when we are being welcomed back into the continent with open arms, with love of all of the, how do we say, continent born Africans, that's what people are calling it. But I just feel like I was taught that when you step into someone's home, you are received as a guest first. And once you have paid the proper respect and honor, reverence, knowledge, you are then able to call it your home too. In the conversation of ancestry, in the conversation of uh, repatriation and reclaiming culture and doing the rebuild of our own knowledge and our own psyche, I felt like a foreigner because I was also, how do we say, forced to understand myself as a Black American. I was forced to understand myself as a Black girl. I was forced to racialize my heritage from a very early understanding in my life because I was buttered in America and because I was born there, and that is how they treat Black minds
I
in
see.
the
Yes.
context of colonial America. But unless I acknowledge that when I stepped into the continent, I could not be in denial about the impact of how our the impact of the systems, the way of life, the way of being, the social standard, the politics, all of those things informed my arrival and the
I
arrival of
see.
those people from America into a foreign country. I wasn't forced to reckon with the impact of the politics
I see.
traveling under the administration of Donald Trump until I was
I'm
really
with you.
outside of America. And I felt that a little bit differently. But it wasn't until I was outside of America that I had to say, wow, I really am a Black girl from America.
I
Because
see.
inside the context of America, you'd be like, I'm an African woman. I'm not from here. Y'all are not my people. I. But when you're
But then
actually
when you land
forced
here, yeah,
when you're actually forced to be honest about how much America has composed your thinking and made and composed your social interactions with people who look like you, it's a lot that you have to be honest with. So that's really my first point of why I think I was able to say I was a foreigner, and I felt like a foreigner in the place of my ancestors because I came with a lot of Americanisms. And I had to do away with them in order to really, truly, honestly connect with the continent as I wanted to, my homeland, as I now am able to call home. Like I had to do away with a lot of understandings first. And that's why I felt like a foreigner very early on in my travels.
and you feel like there was nothing wrong to, because I remember in your earlier statement you said there's nothing, you need to travel and you need to accept the situation that you are the other in
Yes.
that particular moment. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
To being honest, because
Yeah.
by being honest it opens you up to new knowledge, new learning,
Hmm.
unlearning, relearning in the
Yes.
in the in
And
the in the process.
in the conversation of revolutionary organizing, you have to be able to trust everyone who comes to the table as an organizer or to the table as an ally or a friend of an ally or comrade. If I'm going to engage in some sort of change with you, I want to know that your principles reflect mine. And the first thing is I need to know, and I hate to in some Black American culture like gang banging, the first
Mhm.
thing we ask a gang member from another gang member is, where are you from? But when you ask someone else, that conversation is not so hostile, but it's just to make a very honest identification of who are you and what are the possible implications of your presence in this place. And how can
Okay,
we be able to move forward honestly, knowing that you are now a part of us, or we are now
okay,
moving together as a united front. That's
I
just
see.
a quality of honesty I think I've learned from being around so many revolutionary organizers who had to say, there are overt and covert parts of every mission, parts that
Correct.
people can know and parts that people cannot know. And with that, your identity has to be overt. Like it has to be something people could say, yeah, I know that man, I know his family, or I know enough about him to stand on his word and to vouch for him. And when I come to the table with my comrades, I would like to feel the same familiarity, you know?
Mm, mm. And I love this, KariJay, when you talk about these movements, because the beginning of this thought, it started in the issue of for being an other, and when
Mhm.
you came through for the first time, then you realized that other people then kept on asking, okay, now that you're coming from Sacramento, tell us more about Sacramento, because we'll tell you more about Ghana, Accra, we'll tell you more about us, ancestry. And then you began a form of an exchange.
Yes.
Um, and tell us about that exchange. I think it's called West2West.
Yes.
And talk to us about that exchange and what does that exchange does.
Absolutely. So I was again able to travel to Ghana for the first time with my university, University of California, Davis. The year before me, one of my senior classmates, Tia Williams, she traveled and did a year abroad in Ghana. And when she returned, I was leaving. And then when I returned, all of our mutual friends were like, oh my gosh, you all have to connect. You need to meet each other. You both just went to Ghana. Like, y'all should know each other. So we connected. And from our first meeting, we knew that we had to go back to Ghana. Like, oh my gosh, only so many people were able to articulate the extent of my sentiments down to a T that we shared. And I was like, wow, well, if you could say this much about what I felt like I experienced and I wasn't even there with you, then what would happen if we went together and were able to organize a trip? So we organized a trip. We went back to Ghana, and naturally, we didn't go with an itinerary. We just went with the focus of knowing the next time we come, we can't come by ourselves. Like, we were tired of just being one or two from colonial America, coming back and retracing and trying to claim the roots. So T and I came back to Ghana in 2017. That was the year before the official year of return. And we, was it? No, I'm sorry. We went back. That was 2 years before the official year of return. We went back, and then we planned a trip for our family while we were in Ghana. We made all the necessary connections. We were like, okay, we're going to put this out there. We want to be able to introduce our families in America to what we consider to be our families in Ghana and have this cross cultural conversation. So we did that. We went to concerts. We connected with business. I would say bureaus, different coalitions of business owners that wanted to build with people from America, just asking like, what would be the interest? What's the intended goal? How could we be able to facilitate this exchange? What does it look like in business and culture and in education to have that, very healthy conversation? So we did all that planning. And the next year we returned with 35 people from Los Angeles, from Sacramento. We went to Ghana, and we were able to set up meetings. We were able to set up classes, and in those classes, it looked like people from Ghana, of course, teaching us everything from culture, language, cooking. And then we had to go and respond and say, well, what is it like where you're from? And we also,
Okay.
did that on those trips. And we're not just a tour group. We are not just a traveling agency, but we are very intentionally facilitating the exchange of resources, culture, and education um, through our venue of Saturday School. We have a Saturday School program that has operated in Los Angeles, Sacramento, New Orleans, and in Accra, Ghana, where we teach Pan Africanism and Pan Africanist principles. Period. We teach songs, we teach history, we teach arts and culture, but mostly we teach how important it is to be connected to the reflection of yourself and other parts of the world. The students have pen pals, they write to each other, they Zoom each other. We hope to be a full school eventually, but now it's just a Saturday program, and we're open to having that program come to a city near you. You know what I'm saying? But that's what we do. That's what we do. We facilitate the exchange through travel and education. Mainly right now, we also have some health projects where we go into different rural villages and bring nutrient packs. We bring doctors. Every time we go, we bring anything we can, we bring. And that's important about being very honest and transparent about what you're able to do and what you're looking to do.
What? Yeah.
Everybody at the table could say, I can't do it all, but I can do this much. And so we're helping to facilitate as much as we can of an exchange between, the Western Hemisphere and the West Coast of Africa.
So that's where the name West2West comes from.
Yes.
Okay, that's important. I love the fact that you speak about honesty in all of these interactions,
Mm.
because it seems like this for you is a very important aspect of your movement, your exchange, your who you are, your identity. You speak about that, and tell me the ages of the students that participate in the West2West. Is it a specific age or is it open to everybody?
It's really open, but we do ask that if your child is coming and being unsupervised, that they're at least 5 years old. And then the oldest students who are considered students are 18 years old. But at any age, you are allowed to volunteer, teach, be involved in some way. It's really like a church, right? It's like Sunday school, how everybody can come and just learn the Bible.
Okay.
It's the same way. We're not kicking people out, but very, very intentionally having the minds of the younger people focused on the curricula, focused on different parts of what we're trying to teach for the day.
Just for a lighter note, just share with us a story that you found very interesting about your students in your West2West class, whether it
Wow.
is in Los Angeles, Sacramento, or
Yeah.
anywhere.
So this is probably the most rewarding story I have about Saturday school. The first Saturday school was in Sacramento. T and I went to college at UC Davis, which is like a suburb, I would say, ish vibe to Sacramento, the greater Sacramento area. And it was 45 minutes away from my hometown. So we did the Saturday school in Sacramento and we lived there. And the very first student from our Sacramento Saturday school is now a freshman at Xavier University here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And when she called me, it was like, "Oh my gosh, Miss Kari, like I see you in New Orleans. I've been so inspired by your journey. Like I'm coming to Xavier." I was so overwhelmed. She was one of the most shy, most just timid, very quiet girls in Saturday school. She's now a performer, she's an artist, and she's at Xavier University here in New Orleans, Louisiana. So she's probably that story, just watching her continue to grow and be inspired by what we were able to teach her made her want to go to a black school. Because in California, there aren't a lot of HBCUs. There are no
Correct.
HBCUs. So from her experience in a black program or African program, she would like to be at an African school. And that
I
made me
see.
very, very nice and made me feel very, very good.
So it's basically an output for you guys. It is,
Yes.
even if you have not changed the world, but at least you were able to see one aspect of
Yeah.
change in your life. And then you are a musician. Let's not talk about the music first. Let's talk poetry.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk poetry because I want us to start there because I know
Hmm.
that you articulate yourself, you express yourself, and you tend to travel in your words, and you get to another realm. And I've seen and I've heard some of your performances, and and I when I looked at them and I wanted to know what actually influences you in those development of those poetry, in writing those poetry, if you write them, or do they come through as a form of a spiritual capture
Yeah.
from those who came before you? What influences your poetry? And this
You
might
know,
also influence your music.
yes. And I do so greatly appreciate the distinction in the two because as an artist working to define those voices and separate the art forms of poetry and music and songwriting, um, it's like it's a skill that I had to learn how to turn off my poetic voice and how to turn on my musician voice or my songwriting voice. So I do appreciate you asking the question and framing the question in that way. But my influence for poetry definitely comes from spirit. I was very active in the Pentecostal church, like I did mention, and I was very sensitive to the voice of the Holy Spirit and spirit since a child. And I would bring forth the word or sermon and like youth services, and all the times I was used to meditating and waiting till I heard something that I thought was from spirit or I knew was from spirit or God's message. And I was like, "Mom, God got a message. I got to bring it." So I was used to doing that. And it was in church actually where I first performed poetry for the first time. And it was like in alignment with theme of whatever youth conference or something like that. But I meditated on what I thought the theme was, and I do feel like God has brought forth a message. So to this day, I have not produced as much poetry, I feel, as music because I do still wait to hear what I feel like is a message from God or from our higher power before I write my poetry. In music, I'm more influenced on social my social standing and the understanding of myself in social settings. So I love bringing people together. I love making sure people have a good time. I love love and increasing love and vibrations of love. So those type of frequencies come through a bit more fluidly in my songwriting. I'm able to just focus on how I want to make people feel and what's a good vibe or how I'm feeling that day, and just get the music off because it's purely about what I intend for, the audience. But in poetry, it is much more so. I feel like I am just a vessel, and my pen is just, articulating the thoughts of God.
Mm, mm. That's beautiful because it therefore implies that there's probably some very important African traditional principles in relation to poetry, because it's not just about thinking,
Right.
but it's also about the communication that you are getting, whether from the supreme being, God, whichever, Allah, the ancestors, the spirit, but it's something that influences you to say you have to speak. So
Yeah.
it means when you're speaking, you are forced to speak. When
Yes.
you are doing poetry, it's not your choice whether to do it or not, but you are forced to do that particular particular poetry. Now let's talk about how you link. Do you link music to your Pan Africanism? Do you link your poetry
Absolutely. I
to
mean,
Pan
and this is the
Africanism?
part of us that knew we've always been the woman we hope to become. We've always been those women. We just had to figure out the words to call it and the tempo to dance to it. But we knew it. And I think as we began to manifest and create and watch our ideas become realities, we can say, wow, I did want to do a little bit of that since I was a child.
Okay.
But the way that I link music to my Pan Africanness is in the beats and down to the formal structure of my songs. Many of them mirror Afrobeat songs. I would describe my genre as like Afro soul. I'm not
Okay.
really pressed on saying that I'm a hip hop artist. I know that I can rap very well and just naturally having ties to like hip hop through poetry, but I consider myself an Afro soul artist with a deep reverence for African drumming and African tradition in the way that I write music.
Mm.
Um, Pan Africanist principles for me come up, and I when I first went to Ghana and I was performing, I was almost ashamed that all of my songs were in English. Oh, and all of my songs, if people didn't speak English on some of my raps, I was rapping too fast. The lyrics, they would miss the lyrics, and I mean I missed the opportunity as an artist to truly connect with folks who came out to see me, and that didn't make me feel right. So I immediately started writing songs with pidgin, and I immediately
Okay.
started writing songs with more Spanish for different people who are, Africans in the South America or Latin America that were black, and they wanted to hear and see a woman who sounded like them, but she could also speak to them. And so I felt limited in the reach if I didn't
I
speak more
see.
languages. And I still do want to learn more languages, and I think that'd be a way that music helps me to be a lifelong learner. And that I have to make a song in a language and be able to truly convey the emotion behind it without, losing the intent of the song, the intent of the music. So right now, I have a thank you so much. So right now, I'm able to say I think I influenced Pan Africanism with the beats and having thank you, mommy, and having a wider cast net and how far I can go and how many of my people I can reach using the soul and like my Afro soul influence as the base of my creation.
Mm, mm. And this makes it easy for you to navigate. This makes it easy for you to continue to identify, to I want to use the proper word, for you to constantly re-emerge as yourself, because today you might be KariJay, but again tomorrow you bump into something that will escalate you and will make you grow, and you become a better version of yourself. Like
Yes.
one of the songs that I've heard about you, I think there's a Ghanaian language that you use in that particular song.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those things, I've seen them, I've heard them. You are not talking about
Wow,
something that
Odi,
is not true.
I'm also would like to say that I'm so blessed and honored that you follow my music so closely. I would have never known. Thank you so much.
But it's always important to keep up with people of interest to you. But nonetheless, I'm glad. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank
But
you.
what I'm saying is the linkage, the usage of music in this political conversation
Yeah.
of Pan-Africanism, African liberation, and all of that, because sometimes people do not listen to the podcast. People do not want to come and sit down and want to be part of a political class.
Yeah.
But with you, you can. I know that you've been part of a political circle, study group, and you can impart that knowledge from a study group, a political study group, and you can transfer it into your music, and then somebody else will be able to just consume it through beats,
Yeah.
through drums, through poetry, and all that. And I hope
Absolutely.
that one day you can do it in Azania.
Yes, please. Is that the formal invitation? Is that the formal invitation? Because I would love to come, and it's on my personal wish list. As you've known, it's been a wish of mine to come since we first met. I would love to come. My mother has traveled back and forth to Azania, but when I was a child, so I was not able to travel with her, and it's something place I've always wanted to go. Another thing I wanted to touch on too is that to your point, that sometimes music is allows political messages to be more digestible and accessible. But when I think of the type of music I really hope to make is, or how I've been described as by other artists, is as like an artist's artist, which means making music also for the artist. And right now, because music is such a how do I say this? Music has been weaponized against our people in the context of many other conversations where we make music that has messages that really promote the destruction of our people and our mind. So I want to make music to capture those artists too that are responsible for making those messages, responsible for resisting those messages, and let them feel love and let them feel accountable really for just promoting better music and promoting more positive music. I think we can never negate the amount of spiritual warfare that our people are also suffering while we are at the hands of our oppressors in a very physical and political battle. We are also still at spiritual warfare, and artists are really the liaisons between the flesh and the spirit, being able to make you feel differently or feel something that you're not able to touch. Artists create that. And I would like to call on a, a like a refined, more, I don't want to call it a call out, but a call in for artists who are responsible for making music that's promoting the destruction of our people, and whatever form that is, if that's misogyny, if that's literal homicide and murder and killing, whatever way that music has been allowed to promote destruction, we have to do a call in. And so I am making music for people who need digestible messages, but I am also making music for the other artists who need to know that there's a better way.
So the influence, that's where now the influence of change comes in
Yes.
about KariJay, because
Yes.
it is an important thing. As much as you are looking at not only the community, but you are also looking at your fellow artists, the people you regard as colleagues, because some of them, they might be in the conversation of self-destructing, or they might be conduits for self-destruction, but they might not know that they are doing that. Now, in your previous, there's been a lot of conversations around the people who are born in the colonial states of America, that are moving to the continent, especially in Ghana.
Yeah.
With your understanding, because I know there's some critics, there
Yeah.
are those who also promote it. From your perspective and how you perceive it, maybe you might not be in the midst of those things, but from how you perceive the interaction, not now the West to West interaction, but the one that seems to be done by, from a formal perspective, by the government to these
Mhm.
individuals. Do you perhaps know what seems to be going on around that particular process, and what is the pros and cons of that particular process, if you are willing to talk about that?
Yes, I say, and I want to be clear that you're referring to like the long-term relocation,
Yes, yes,
repatriation.
yes.
So two ways to feel about that. It's many ways to feel about everything, but I feel two ways about repatriations and repatriates, and the idea of moving back home to Ghana. The first, or to any place that you're going to consider your ancestral home, because folks are also going to Nigeria in waves, Senegal, Cameroon, and doing that necessary work of uncovering what an ancestral responsibility would look like. My first point is that Africa as a continent, as a unified sovereign continent, is not well. That the hands of colonial powers are invading Africa as we speak. And I'm making that generalization because it's happening everywhere. That's a very intentional generalization. We are not well as a continent. And so I believe that anybody who's coming, again, coming from a different country into an African country, you must understand the current climate of what you're standing, where you're coming, and what are the political standings of the country, and their whatever foreign powers still dictate the economy there. I think a lot of people in America think that they can go back to Africa and live well because we have money, and the difference of the money is going to multiply once you touch down. That is true. But unless you are coming with a very organized critique of how you represent a colonial power and how you have an association with the colonial power who has exploited the country that you're now coming to live in, unless you come with that critique, you are coming as a foreigner and as someone who hopes to promote a foreign agenda, only because you're not building with the locals there. And I'm not saying that every foreign agenda is one of malice intent, but in the conversation of revolutionary organizing, unless you're organizing with people who are on the ground in the country that you hope to repatriate to, you are a foreigner and you are bringing a foreign agenda. Not to say that it's, like I said, malicious, but we have to be able, and I'm saying we, those people who are not born on the continent of Africa, we have to be able to dismiss our claim and our entitlement to a leadership role and what African liberation looks like. If we truly want our folks to be liberated, we will want them to also want to be liberated. And what I see, and when I go back a lot of time, is that folks run programs in communities of in poor communities, and they lack the just it's just people being able to come. I'm sorry. It's people being able to come and receive food, but when they leave, they don't know the organization. They don't know the organization's principles. They don't know the history. They kind of just were there because they needed whatever material provisions were being made, like food, clothes. It's not like something substantial that was retained from our exchange. That's what we're looking
Mhm.
for. Something to be retained from after we leave, after we fed you and you fed me, we can able to say that I ate from your plate and you ate from mine. But that's not always what happens. So I just believe that unless people are repatriating with the intent to help Africa be well, to make sure Africa could get on her own feet and move at her own pace again, then you
Okay.
shouldn't be there and you shouldn't be going. Because the idea of going back is not new. People came in
Yes.
and divided Africa way long ago and wanted to discover her beauty and her treasures. So if you're not coming with that awareness that you're not doing nothing new, even the black repatriates, have have come in waves and different times and different eras and different trends in history have promoted and influenced people to feel prompted and urged to move to Africa. But what we have to do is do it differently in a way that
Okay.
does not feel like we've done it before. This has already happened.
Mhm.
We have to do it in a way that reflects nothing of our oppressors or the colonizers that are currently taking over each African country in Africa. We
I
can't do it
see.
like them. It has to have a very distinct difference, and we have to stand on that. So that's how I feel about it. I think we should go back with a mindset of service and a mindset of doing what needs to be done. We don't have to be the leaders. We
Mhm.
don't have to be in front. We don't have to be in charge. Though I would say, the co-founder of an organization that does work in Africa. I do not hold like sole proprietorship over that entity.
I see.
We are a collaborative unit. We have staff in every city and every community that we serve. There's someone who has authority to make decisions there. And I think that's important. And we have to be able to share whatever consensus of power we're created. We have to be able to share it amongst ourselves because we mirror our oppressors quite easily when we move like them.
Yeah. That's also beautiful because it leads me to another question that I think it might have been important because of how people, especially those who come from poor communities, whether in other colonized territories, Puerto Rico, South America, Africa, and the power dynamic with which you, being born and bred in the colonial states of America, the
Mm-hmm.
power dynamic, because somebody, when they see you or when they come into your midst, they might feel like an element of superiority in the conversation. And how do you then deal with that aspect yourself?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the exact aspect that you're speaking of? You're saying when
The,
I'm dealing with
the,
someone from the continent that has this element of
yes,
superiority.
that has got a mentality that you are the ones who you are superior than them, in
Oh
relation
yes,
to whatever
yes,
that you are
yeah.
engaging on. How do you deal with that power dynamic yourself without imposing how they should deal with
Hmm.
you?
Hmm.
But how do you navigate that?
Absolutely, I believe that it's very similar in the classroom when you are trying to get a child to understand their own power and you're trying to let the student know that I won't be able to do everything for you. Like, this is not my job. Like, a part of what you have to learn, you have to make up the decision in your mind that I want to learn it. And so when I'm deconstructing false situations of power or false situations of superiority, I always go back to like a teacher mindset. And I just ask the
Mhm.
question, so what do you truly know about me? What do you know about America? Why are you so sure that place is better than where you are now?
I
If it
see.
was so much better, then why am I here? Do you think I came from America just to be better than you? Or I must need something from this place if I'm here? Like, just keeping it very
Yes.
inquisitive
Yes.
and not being so sure. This is another thing I think I navigate um navigating the parameters of all possibilities. Because just because I am deconstructing the superior narrative, I had to also hear where that was coming from in some of my African brothers and sisters. It's not saying that we think that you're better than us. It's that we saying we know you have more resources and you're more equipped to make the next step our best step.
I
And at
see.
first I was like, no, 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 or this is a better conversation. Or when we were bringing people to Ghana for the first time, and we're teaching them to not be offended when people ask them for money, right? It's like, you don't have to understand why. Just know that when they're asking you, or not asking you, or when you're being petitioned for money, it's because firstly, someone feels comfortable enough to ask you.
To
And then
ask you for money.
secondly, right, and then secondly, you have been identified as an able party to do that. And I think when you're coming from a narrative or a context where you're told that you should understand yourself through a lens of deficit and not having, sharing resources is very hard to do without feeling like
Mm.
someone's trying to exploit you or take away from you. And it says you have to come back into the understanding of, maybe I'm the one at the table because I'm able, firstly,
Okay.
you know,
I see.
and
I
that
see.
doesn't mean I'm in charge. that just means that I'm able to help push the initiative forward. And I personally help navigate that by having a very clear understanding of who is everyone again. Who are you? Hello, mommy. How are you? That's somebody's mama. You know, that's somebody's grandmother. This is someone's father. This is someone that has no children, but definitely has been a long-term identified community member. And we have to be able to know what are the stakes at the table before we're so quick to assume authority or superiority or deny it. Because sometimes it's a very natural way the community tells you you are our representative, and we would like for you to be the one who provides the answers, like we're asking
Mhm.
you, because we need it. And so I think there's a way that you discern within yourself, am I being promoted and I'm being how do I say, elected by the people to be the leader, or am I coming in thinking it should be me just because it should be me,
Yes,
or just
yes.
because I'm from my place, or just because I'm from my side?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think I've seen it happen both ways, where my people are able to say, no, Kari, we would actually love for it to be you, just because we know that you're connected to American universities and we need to maximize that connection. Oh, for sure. And that's how I know I can do that. I can write to the universities
Mhm.
in America, but then I'm able to say, okay, I'm also going to do that part. And then when I'm done with that part, I've done my bid. I'm not in charge. I'm not the most important contributor. I'm not
Mhm.
just doing what's being asked of you in the revolution, in the movement. It removes the need for power, because people should be contributing, even the leaders. So what is
They
your
should be.
contribution? What is your contribution? That's always my the back of my head. I'm asking myself, what was your contribution today? Okay.
I see.
Then you're able to say that's what you did.
I see. This is a one of the beautiful conversations about Pan Africanism in this platform. I can tell you that it's and I'm sure that those who are watching are feeling some form of a culture in one way or the other, because we have not we've broken down what is more Pan-Africanism, but we have not used those traditional, difficult, ideological concepts about this conversation. Now, as we are approaching a conclusion, I want to ask you about the importance of organization, belonging to an organization when you do the type of work that you do. For some people, they say, now, organizations, there's a lot of bureaucracy, hierarchy, and decision makers are going to be many, so it's better when I'm alone. What is your view about belonging to an organization when you do the type of work that you do, even though you are an independent artist
Yeah.
yourself?
Yes. You know, the power really is for the people. People say power to the people, and knowing that people is a plural term, that you cannot be in this revolution by yourself, and you also cannot be in this world by yourself. You're naturally and organically standing on the shoulders of people who helped you be here today. So I think different capitalist and colonialist thoughts would tell us that we would be better if we were isolated in individual fronts of power, and we're able to organize our own things, and we'll get a control on our own life. Then that's when we are most powerful, when I'm able to demand the things that I want to see. I can afford them, I can pay for them. Now I am happy, I'm a good person, I did it myself. I think that is so backwards, especially from an African point of view, where we know that we are literally greater in numbers, and when we have more numbers we can do more. So in the context of organizing, I was able to feel like a more worthy contributor when I wasn't stressed to be the main sole contributor. When I'm able just to provide my 2 or 3 top skills to the mission and not have to be responsible for conducting the whole task list myself, I was able to better organize my time and my talent. When there were more people who were responsible for getting all of our tasks finished, I would made a better use of my energy, better use of my essence, better use of everything. So when you come to an organization to say, hey, the problems that are keeping me up at night, the issues that are worrying my spirit, the things I know I've been called to respond to, They are far greater than my person, my individual and singular person. And I need, because my life has now been disturbed so deeply by these things, I have to direct my life to address them. And I've adopted lifelong principles to address them. I need more than just my own power and my own might to properly address these things. And
Address
so
these things.
becoming a part of an organization, I only would urge you to join an organization that aligns with the lifestyle principles that you live, because you had to be a worthy contributor to that organization. And you want to come and say, wow, not only was I contributing, but I was also learning. I was also able to watch and refine my skills because I was around people who have been in the organization longer, or people who have, moved forward. There are many different types of organizations. I urge our people to join whatever organization is advancing the liberation of all our people. That's where I think you should be. But if it's not working for all of us, then it's not the answer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So it's important you must join an organization. That is the message. Join an organization. What is your message to our viewers on this? Some call it Africa Month. What is
Hey,
others call it African Liberation Month.
yeah,
As your closing remarks, I would
yes.
give you about a minute or so to put across your message in whatever way you want, in any way, your message to our people on this month of May as an African Liberation or Africa Month.
My message is that we are truly the answers to our own questions, and we seek earnestly to become and further define ourselves in regard to our people, in regard to our responsibility to our people. We will never, ever, ever go in the wrong direction. To trust yourself, to trust the voice of God, to trust the voice of your ancestors. No one is beyond reproach, but we know what we know. And I think we should trust ourselves and move at the pace of liberation. That means whatever has to be done to liberate your mind every single day, that you should do it. If it's a habit that you have to break, if it's a mindset that you have to shift away from, do something different today. And as it aligns with the liberation of our people, teach somebody something different today. Don't get so comfortable in what you think you know that you stop learning new things and new ways to share what you know. You are the answer. You are the answer.
Thank you very much, Takarra Johnson, KariJay, for making the time and being part of this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, it was so good. You asked really good questions.
that is that is very nice, and I also thank those people who are with you at home for allowing us some time for an hour to take you away from them. Tell them that we appreciate it in this part of the continent, and for our viewers as well, we are thankful for everything. And I'm glad I enjoyed this conversation. I loved it, and I hope that even our viewers might have learned one thing or two from you. Thank you very much, KariJay.
Thank you for having me, Odie. All the best in all your endeavors. Everything that you touch is gold.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. As you have heard and you have seen, listened to Takarra Johnson KariJay, a proud Pan-Africanist woman who is an artist, musician, poetry, comrade, and organizer. She works in West2West. She has got various exchanges. We thank you very much for being part of this conversation. Make sure that you join us once again on another conversation very, very soon on Ponte Politique on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. All the best. Bye bye.